Double Trouble is the first episode of the 5th season of Full House. This is directed by Zwick, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And it's an absolutely brilliant start to the 5th season. There are two main parts of the narrative. I will talk about those in turn, but I first of all want to mention this beautifully executed scene. It's DJ's first day of high school, and she asks Danny how she looks, and Danny says she looks cute, and DJ remarks that he's meant to say, "You're not going out dressed like that." And Kimmy comes in dressed quite, not necessarily completely modestly, but she's dressed in a way that Danny would approve of. And Danny turns his back on Kimmy and starts to give this little speech to DJ about how actually she could learn something from Kimmy, about how Kimmy's not bothered about looking sexy. And in the background, Kimmy is completely changing her appearance, and it seemed quite normal. She was taking her hair down and I think pulling down her tights or her socks, and then she just rips off her shirt and is wearing considerably less clothing underneath. And it was just, in Danny's expression when he turned around, it was brilliant, beautifully executed, very entertaining. The other two parts of the narrative focus on Michelle's first day of kindergarten, and also the fact that Jesse and Becky have a doctor's appointment and they find out something pretty interesting. And I will talk about Michelle first. Michelle wakes up, well actually she's awake in the middle of the night, unable to sleep. Joy sings a song with her. She's clearly very excited, but she's nervous because she's worried the kids won't like her. I do have a question. I'm not in the States, so I don't know how it works. But would Michelle be going to kindergarten with different children to the people in her pre-K class? Or would she be going with the same children? Because usually when we go to school in the UK, if you go to nursery that's connected to the same school, you then go to reception with the same children. Is it different in the States? Would they be different children? It's just a question. It's not really affecting my enjoyment of the episode. I'm just keen to know, would the pre-K children be the same as the kindergarten children? Joey gives her some advice to say hello in a strange way with her hands on her head, and Michelle does this, and she gets called names for being weird. And she decides, enough of this. She leaves the classroom, goes into the corridor, and there are children everywhere, but they all disperse, going into their classrooms. It's time for lessons. Michelle is completely alone in that corridor, and that would have been terrifying for that age. But she goes in search of Stephanie, and Stephanie is in her new classroom with her teacher. She's very attracted to this teacher, and Michelle bobs up and down outside the classroom trying to see in the window, and she ends up crawling into Stephanie's classroom, and the teacher sees this, of course, and asks if Stephanie would like to introduce her guests. Stephanie clearly doesn't want to do this, but Michelle stands up and says quite loudly, "You were right, he is a major babe," which would have just been the most embarrassing thing ever. And Stephanie ends up taking Michelle back to her kindergarten class, and Stephanie shows the children that Michelle was just teaching them a cool new way to introduce themselves and say hello, and she gets the children all speaking in the Bullwinkle way, which was really sweet, and I think Stephanie handled it in a very mature way, and it definitely helps to show that actually Michelle now being the age that Stephanie was in the first season, which is absolutely crazy to think about. Michelle is now the age that, Stephanie is now the age that DJ was, which is really scary, actually. A lot of time has passed, and Stephanie is really growing up and is a lot more mature and wise with certain things because she's had that experience, and it's rather sweet. Of course, the main narrative focuses on Jesse and Becky, and Jesse comes back from being on the road over summer, and at night he'd read the baby book. He's really excited about becoming a father, and he wants to know if it's a boy or a girl, but Becky wants to be surprised. And they go to the doctor's office, and the doctor tells them the babies will be just fine. And of course they realise, babies plural, they're having twins. Becky is clearly very excited about this. Jesse is a lot more, well, as he puts it, apprehensive. And he comes home after a few hours and he ends up talking with Michelle, and he tells Michelle, it's our little secret because I'm nervous, but I don't want to talk to the rest of the family. And Michelle absolutely did the right thing. Actually, before I missed a point, actually, before they got to that point, Jessie was in the kitchen with Manny Tanner, Danny's evil twin, and also Joey's evil twin, which was a really good fun. A nice little addition to include. And then there were 2 comets, which was adorable. He then goes to talk to Michelle, and Michelle did the right thing by by calling for Stephanie. Stephanie solved her problem at school, so maybe Stephanie can solve Jessie's problem. And Jessie told Stephanie she was a little too young for this, so she called DJ, who ended up calling Danny, Joey, and Becky. And they all come down, and Jessie has to admit that he's absolutely terrified. And it's not that he doesn't want 2 children, it's that he's going to be responsible for 2 little lives, and he's terrified. And honestly, I imagine anybody in that position would feel the same. And Becky admits that she's also nervous, and Danny offers some words of encouragement, and they were there for him. And they helped him to realise that he's not going to be alone. Of course, he has Becky, but also everybody else is there to help them raise the children the way Jessie helped Danny when he needed help raising the girls. And it was a really lovely way to end things and a really beautiful moment. And I think it's a really sweet episode. Highlights would be definitely Michelle standing up and saying, "You were right, he is a major babe." The teacher's face at that point was pretty funny. And I think just the way they handled Jessie's part of the story and the honesty and vulnerability we had with that character, I thought was great. Needless to say, also Kimmy getting undressed was a was a highlight as well. Definitely a really brilliant episode to what I remember is a really solid season, and I'm looking forward to rewatching the rest of season 5 of Full House.